Good morning, good morning. If anybody's out there, I know today might be a bit slack because I know there's some kind of big meeting or training or something Pete's putting on this morning at the same time. So I might be by myself today. But we will see and see how it goes from there. And if I am, I just am. I hope wherever you are, the sun's shining and it's not quite so gloomy as it is here today. The fog's been thick and heavy and rainy, and I think it's supposed to be that way at least till afternoon. Maybe after that it'll clear up. Oops, I think somebody just flew into the window. I have a chipmunk in my bird feeder. Hey, Carol, hi there. I see. You said you were visiting. Where do you have to go to do that and stay in a hotel? If you don't mind my asking. And since you're on here, I'll go ahead and ask something else. Are you not in Pete's Kalamazoo? Are you not in Pete's training today or this weekend? I have no idea what's going on. I didn't get any messages, so I think I'm not big enough to qualify. Hey, Brenda, you signed on too. Thank you. Hit that like button for me and subscribe if you're not already. Say hi to Carol. She's in Kalamazoo today. Carol, I got some bad news. I investigated that book reader guy I was talking about. His name is Dick Estelle, Richard Estelle. Turns out he was from Michigan State. Sorry. He passed away just a few years ago, I read. And his obituary referred to him as the reader. He'd read, I can't remember how many, if it's 300 books or more he'd read online through the public radio station or whatever out of Michigan State and published on national radio. I would have done Pete's thing, but family first. Absolutely. So, do you have any clue or idea what Pete's thing is about? I mean, I just heard it as moderator, so I'm guessing that they're trying to get moderators to all act the same way. Howdy, Hitchhiking Bones from Texas. Big football game out that way this year. They call it Battle of Red River, something like that. And now that I say that, I'm trying to think Tennessee plays somebody, but I can't guess who it is. Carol. Well, I don't know if he wrote much, but he read a lot. That's how I learned. I found out about a lot of books I've read over the years. Or then for the 15 or so years I was in Nashville, I listened to him just about every day. And then after that, I was able to listen to him in Johnson City when I moved up there and was working between here and there. I'd tune him in up there too. So that's where I learned. I think that's where I learned about Pat McManus. Billy, good morning. How are you, ma'am? How's your part of New York this morning? Anybody getting any of the bad weather? I hope everybody's safe. I don't know if Cherie and them got some or not down on the coast, but parts of Carolina had some flooding more up my way towards the mountains. And then there was a fair bit of that up around here too. I understand. I didn't even realize it was that bad. I knew it rained a lot, but bad thing about it here, when it does rain and if the rivers and creeks flood, they're usually in pretty steep hollers and valleys, and usually there's houses down there that end up in trouble. Wow, 61. I don't know what it was down here this morning. Well, it says 63, so I guess we're about the same as you guys were, or are close anyway. But when the sun comes out, that may change, if it does. Yesterday was gloomy. Oh, anyway, I was talking about Dick Estelle. He read a lot of really good books online and on the air and over the years. And this was back before I'd ever heard of an Audible tape or CD or, streaming it on the phone or radio. But Ken Follett, he wrote On Wings of Eagles, I believe was the name of his book. It was a true story about, help me out here, Don, Ross Perot, when he went into Iraq to pull out people that worked for him that were trapped over there when the hostages were taken in 80 or 879. And so I read that book. He read it, but then I turned around and read it again. Pat McManus, I believe he's the first one I ever heard read Pat McManus or talk about him. Gee, so many good books now. I can't think of all the titles. Well, I mean, I didn't hear them all, but so many good ones. Oh, you got to go, Carol? Time for breakfast? Hook 'em horns. Where are they playing this year? Don, I probably will watch some of it. Unfortunately, it's on the same time today as the Tennessee game is. I think they both start around noon. So that's definite conflict of interest for me. Billy, how's everybody else up here? Kenzie and that wild husband of yours, is he good this morning? Okay. I'm going to assume he's at home or something, and you're in the hotel, so he's coming to meet you at the hotel, and you guys are going to have breakfast somewhere. Ooh, what are you going to have? Oh, you good people don't have biscuits and gravy and grits up there, do you? Well, you might, but I bet you don't have grits. Well, before you get going, and I miss you this morning, I'm Chingachgook Bear today. I don't know if you know who Chingachgook was or not, but I hope some of you have heard of James Fenimore Cooper and the Leather Stocking Tales, that books he wrote about early America. Got him working. That's good. Keep him busy. That keeps his mind, busy, so he can't get into trouble. Keeps his hand out of snowblowers, which I heard. Speaking of that, I saw on the news a few minutes ago out west is starting. Some states, areas in the high elevations out west are already starting to get snow. The Cotton Bowl. Is that supposed to be? Do they look at that as a neutral field, Don, or is that because that's pretty? That's Texas. I don't know how they do that out there, but some teams have to give the other team, the opposing team, so many tickets for their fans. And some schools I know in the South, like basketball, Kentucky basketball, They only give out a minimum of tickets to anybody that's not a Kentucky fan. They get most of them. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of burnt orange down there today, and not as near as much red or red and white. That should be a pretty good game, though. Oh, I know who Tennessee's playing. South Carolina. That should be pretty good. I think Tennessee might beat them, but I don't know. We're still, we got yet another new coach, and so far he's doing pretty good, I think. But I like college football. I tend to watch college football, and rarely anymore do I watch professional football. I hate to say I've lost interest, but there's nobody playing right now that I tend to follow players, and the players that I root for right now have retired, and so I don't really I'm not following anybody. I was a Miami Dolphins fan for many years, from the time I was about 10, and before anybody knew. I mean, that's back when you could even barely ever see a game, because that was back when the American League and the National League were two different football groups, and you didn't see as much of the American League. Now then they became conferences, and both in the National League, so they became more exposed. But Don Shula was the head coach for the Colts, and I was a Colts fan when they were in Baltimore. And then when he left and went to Miami, I kind of followed him down to Miami, and then was a big fan of Miami's for a long time before they started winning. And then when they had their big, the great teams of the 70s. And I followed them on up until they hired one particular coach that they kind of ran Don Shula off, sort of like Dallas did with Tom Landry, which I didn't like either. They just sort of treated those guys, helped build those teams, and Landry had been at Dallas forever, and they just kind of dumped them. I mean, I just felt that was wrong, but that's how I am. So when Miami did that, I kind of quit following them for a while and didn't much care for Dallas after that either. And then when Peyton Manning was playing in Baltimore, or not Baltimore, but for the Colts in Indianapolis, I followed them pretty heavily. And then when he went back, and I had followed Denver for a long time. There was a couple of people that played with the old Baltimore Colts team that went to Dallas or Denver. So I watched those guys. And then when Peyton ended up out there, it was even better. Well, anyway, that's how I am about football. So I don't pay that much attention to the pro ball. I've never liked professional basketball. I barely like college basketball. I watch it a little bit during tournaments. And I'm not a bettor, so I don't gamble on games. So I probably like baseball better, and I haven't even been watching that so much lately. But I'm trying to get caught up here in the playoffs and see how far the Braves can go this year. And let's see if I can make an enemy or two here. But see who. Hopefully, somebody can beat the Dodgers, and the Yankees are already gone, so I don't have to root against them now. Sorry, New York fans. The Yankees have a long history in my family. My mom was a Yankees fan. There was actually a lot of Yankees fans down this way back then. And there was a local farm team. It was with the Yankees, but there was a lot of Yankees fans. And basically at my house, my mom and dad were baseball fans. Dad played baseball, semi-pro ball. And but there was baseball on, especially like World Series and stuff. They were watching it or keeping up with it. And my mom, if the Yankees were playing, my mom was for the Yankees. So, and basically my dad was for anybody playing the Yankees. He wasn't a Yankees fan, and he didn't care to, So I got to watch that growing up. The rivalry within the house was almost better than on the field. I mean, it didn't much matter who they were playing. Dad wasn't going to pull for them. He didn't care who it was. Good morning, Brenda. I need to get Brenda's And I think I finally got it posted last week, but I need to get Brenda's Etsy page up. She's got some Halloween aprons if anybody's interested in Halloween stuff. And I don't think anybody's looked at them yet. I don't know if anybody knew they were out there. But I know at least one of them is very cute. Oh, I can't remember the name again. Windows, no. Oh, Brenda, tell me again what's the name of the site. Why can I never get to that? I thought it was Sunny Windows Creations. Sunny Windows. That's what I put. I thought. Maybe I spelled something wrong. Oh. Mickey Mantle was my dad's favorite player. Well, I kind of like Mickey Mantle too, even though he was with the Yankees. But the rest of and if I'd been around when Babe Ruth and Gehrig were playing, I might have been for them then too. But because those guys were great baseball players. Never much cared for Ted Williams. I don't know why, but I can remember some great World Series with them and Baltimore Orioles, and back when Big Red Machine was playing, and with Cincinnati, and like I said, my mom and dad kept up with all that stuff. And I can even remember, I've probably talked about all this before, but I can remember when we even had a couple of teachers in grade school, elementary school, like fourth and fifth grade, who would actually turn baseball games on during the World Series. Once we had TVs in the classroom for learning purposes, but they would watch. They liked baseball, so they'd watch the World Series, and we'd get to watch the World Series in class. Those were the best days. Well, Brenda, I still can't find it. Hang on. Oops, I dropped something. Give me just a minute, folks, if you don't mind. Where am I at? I lost myself. Oh, there we are. What are you in here as? Brenda Pruitt. Brenda, do you have a different name? Oh, well, that was not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's hope I got back. Where's Teddy? Teddy's sitting right here sound asleep. I was going to try to get him up just in a second. Hey, Don, it's funny. When Johnson City had the farm team for the Yankees, we went to a game one night, and there was a kid there that was a young player fresh out of high school or something, who was wearing the number 7, which was Mickey Mantle's Mickey Mantle's jersey number. And the night we were there, he hit a home run every time he came up to bat. Like 3 or 4 times he hit home runs, and the Yankees called him up like the next week. It was in the papers, and he went up and played with the Yankees for a little while. But he couldn't hit that big league pitching quite as well as he did the minor league stuff. So I think they shipped him back down. I don't know whatever happened to him after that. But it was cool that he was wearing Mickey's number and then hitting all those home runs. At least the night we were there. Well, Brenda, I still can't find it. Here, I don't know. Carol, are you still here? Hey, you feel like getting up for a minute? Let some folks see you while you're still here, while we're still here. Oh, wait a minute. At least let them say hi. Okay? Look. Turn around. Say hi. You're not going to even look. You're going to refuse. You're going to refuse to look at the camera. We can get some treats if you do. You want a treat? You want a treat? Want some catnip? That's what I should have done, Brendan. I should have got him smoked up on catnip this morning. He would have been right in this TV thing. Oh no, am I frozen? No, there I go. I'm glad you got to see him, Carol, because he didn't stay too long. I told him we got to adjust this morning nap time because it's right in the middle of, the show. He gets his breakfast, and right before I can sign on, or right before I come down here, about the time I come down here. So by the time I start the show, he's already had a couple of, he's eating and he's ready to nap. Because that's what Teddy's do, He's got on his journeyman's card for that he now has. How he got in the Actors Guild, I don't know, but he's got his journeyman's card or whatever they call it. It's got sleeper on there, so he could be a paid sleeper for TV commercials or shows, sitcoms, that sort of thing. Hey, Turl said hi. Turl said hi to you, Teddy. Turles, remember Turles? Yeah, he went back to licking. So he said hi to Turtles too. Oh, I stopped halfway through. I was going to tell you about my Chingachgook bear. So I think I've mentioned this before too, but Chingachgook and Uncas were the last of the Mohicans in the book and in the movie. Last of the Mohicans, and the movie or the book. I guess that was the title of the book too. The other main character in the book was Hawkeye, which was Chingachgook was the older native Indian, and Uncas was his son, his natural son, and Hawkeye or Leatherstocking, depending on who was talking to him at the time. I can't remember his actual name now. Anyway, he was adopted son of Chingachgook. And, in the movie, Uncas died and left Chingachgook as the last of the Mohicans. Hey, Dave Cantrell. Good to see you, buddy. Glad you made it in this morning. Actually, a couple more people here than I thought would be. I kind of thought most people might be over at the training session, but I don't know. Maybe everybody's not going to that, or maybe everybody wasn't invited today. I think there's another one tomorrow, or maybe you just chose not to go. Look, I had something I was going to show you today. Anyway, this past week I reconnected with Uncas. My buddy Mark and I were fans of the story and the movie too eventually, but he was younger than me, so he kind of picked up the moniker. I started calling him Uncas, and he started calling me Chingachgook. And when we were rendezvousing and doing muzzleloading reenactments and that sort of thing, we kind of went by those names, or between each other we did. And so this week he called me. He was one of the guys that I've been trying to find. So I'm actually been pretty happy this week. He called about Wednesday. I got a phone call. It was his name, and I just about peed myself trying to get to the phone because I've been looking for him and hadn't. Good morning, Francisco. You know what? Can you guys hear me? I put my phone in the floor. My mic in the floor. Let me get this up here in case Tracy might be listening out there. And Billy, you can tell Tracy I did this. Good morning, Francisco. Francisco. That's fun to say. It actually kind of is fun to say. So, welcome in, Francisco. How's California today? You guys getting any rain? I heard there was some on the way. So, Uncas and I have reconnected, and it has been a glorious thing. We hadn't talked in way, way too long. It's probably been at least 10 years. And both of us are trying to figure out why. Okay. No wonder I couldn't get it. You led me astray, Brenda. So this past week, we've been talking and texting. He's got a phone. I was actually surprised he had a smartphone. And I told that on the last show, I mentioned that. And he has gone back now and binge watched some of my shows. And he got a hoot out of the fact that I said that about him getting away from the computers. But it's pretty much true, although he does still have some stuff, obviously. And but he wasn't, that he's kind of like me in some ways. I like doing computer stuff, and I did a lot more than some of my co-workers. But at the same time, we would like to get out and do things on the land. So that's kind of how Mark was. Hey, Tracy Glenn. Good to see you, Tracy. Pearl, what in the world are you doing up so early? You said you were going to try to be here. I love it when you make it, and I feel bad because I know you had to get up really early to be here, unless you've not weren't sleeping. I talked to Garrett last week or week before. He wasn't going to be on the show, but I was talking to him like at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I said, or 7. I said, so you're up already? And he said, I ain't been to bed yet. So he was getting ready to go to bed, so I knew he wasn't going to be in the show or be on. I'll get up and make a pizza. Pizza for breakfast. Not bad. Not a bad choice. Hey, pass holder pair. Mike, right? Mike or I tell you what, people, getting old ain't fun, especially when your mind starts to leave you. I can't remember. I have a CRS, as they used to say. Can't remember crap. Okay, well, at least you get an extra hour sleep on the weekend. I was actually thinking about reading another chapter of Pat McManus, one of his actual stories today. I don't know how many people. If anybody's interested, I could read it, and then you could tell me later. But and I guess there's 2 ways you can vote on that. You can just leave, or you can, tell me how it was. But I thought I might read the first chapter of this book, which isn't very long. And it's actually the title chapter of the book, The Fine and Pleasant Misery. I'll wait just a minute. What time is it? 10:29. Yeah, I'll wait just a few minutes. Val. I could not remember. I figured it was you, Mike, because usually you're the one on early at least. And are you not drinking coffee, or you have something stronger in your cup this morning, Mike? Oh, really? Pat McManus. Well, that's spelled a little different if he had 2 N's. My Pat's or the Pat I'm talking about was 1, but or MANUS. He was born and raised in Idaho, but Pat McManus. That's interesting. Who did he call for, Pearl, down that way? Like a newscaster. No, a sportscaster. Did he call for one of the college football teams or something, anything like that, or was he just on the news? I'm trying to look at the camera a little bit more. As I've noticed last time, I didn't look up a lot, and so I'm trying to improve. So anyway, Mark and I got back together, and I posted some pictures on Instagram. So if you haven't looked at my Instagram page lately, check it out. And because he's retired. Also, he's about 5 or 6 years younger than me, and but he's always been incredibly artsy and crafty, good with his hands. His dad's the same way. And so Mark, in fact, I've got a couple of paintings here or drawings that Mark did on the wall behind me. And you guys had probably seen them and didn't know what they were because I've used them for backdrops and stuff like that. One's a couple of teepees, and the other one's a bobcat, like a pencil drawing or charcoal. And but he's gotten in, and he makes handmade wooden bows that kind of like Native American bows on it. Well, maybe a little bit longer, but then I've got one hanging in my closet here. He gave me years ago, but he's doing that, and he's making saddles, and I'm really impressed with that part. I think he told me he had made about 28 saddles now and sold a few of them and given a couple of them to friends and family, or I don't know if they bought them from him or not, but he probably just did them. And he's doing tool leather, and they're beautiful. I mean, he's really good at it, and I can definitely see him becoming, or at least having a name out west for making saddles. I don't think he's really gotten to the point where he's doing a web page or anything. I'm going to talk to him about that, and he may not want that kind of business. I don't know how long it takes him to make one, but I've got some pictures posted on my web again on Instagram. Take a look, because saddles for horses. You need a saddle, Don. They're beautiful. They're the ones I've seen so far look like they're sort of the older style Western saddles that have a higher back and a higher front. I don't know if he makes English type saddles or not. Oh, so same spelling then. That's cool. 2 Pat McManuses. He made one. There's a kind of a famous saddle. It's in a museum out there. If some of you may or may not be familiar with the Western artist named it just slipped right out of my mind. Charlie Russell. And there was Frederick Remington was famous for his paintings of the West. And Charlie Russell was in some ways, I used to like Remington stuff better, but then I kind of learned about Charlie Russell, and he may have done more authentic paintings. It's a slightly different style. You can sort of tell his hand from their work apart. But Russell lived with the Indians. He lived with cowboys. First yawn. And he had a saddle. I don't know who made his. I don't know where it came from, and I don't know if he wrote about it or talked about it a lot. But it's a pretty famous saddle, and somebody asked him to make a replica of that, so he did. And I looked it up, and Charlie Russell's saddle is online. You can find the images of it. That's what I was trying to remember. It's in a museum somewhere out there. It might be in Wyoming, and I don't know if that's where he got his pictures and drawings and stuff to. Mark could have gone in and seen the saddle and drew it. He's really good with pen and pencil, and or whatever he happens to choose. And but he made it for his. Now that I think about that, might have been for one of his new son-in-laws. He had gotten remarried a few years ago, and he gained, I believe he said 2 sons and a daughter, maybe, with his new wife. And he'd made, I think that's what he said. I think he made the saddle for one of them. Man, it's gorgeous. I mean, if you like, and the work, I just can't imagine how much work he puts in them and how long it takes, because there's a lot going on there. It's big chunks mostly, but there's so much forming and shaping, and getting it all right and getting the leather tight and making it, fit around all the curves and stitching it. And they look really good. I don't know. Let me see. So happy you connected with me here. Yeah, it is better, Pearl. It's I actually connected with a couple of friends. I think. Well, let me think back. I may have connected with one before my last show. If not, it was last week, and then Mark called me this week, and we got caught up some, and we're talking just about every day now. But last night, I also talked to a friend that I used to work with, and I've had very little contact with the folks I worked with here, just one or two, and I had found out that this guy I worked with had purely random chance meeting with the other friends of mine that I just got back in touch with, the Pattons, out in the ones that live in Denison, Texas. Don. He's a professor at Southeast Oklahoma State. Anyway, and I had seen on Facebook that they were friends with this guy I worked with, so I had to ask her about it. She said, "Yeah, we met him in Big Bend last year camping," and I thought, what a random thing to happen. So I finally sent him a letter or email last night or text, and I told him I understand you know the Pattons from Texas. I said, "Quit poaching my friends, buddy." Laughing sort of way, and he ended up calling me back, and we talked for an hour, I guess, last night, just about meeting them and the things he'd been into. A lot of the folks down there have been, working from home since COVID hit, and he actually managed to go spend some time out west and working from, Mobley, or is that the right word? Anyway, and so it was good to talk to him too. Actually, I just hadn't talked to folks from down there. Like I said, kept up with one or two people, but most of them I haven't heard a thing out of till last night. So yeah, I'm actually in a much better mood than I have been in a while because I've lost my Kleenex. But talking to Mark was probably the biggest mood lifter because Brenda had actually been after me to try to find him for a while because we lost each other's contact info, and so she kind of been after me for a while to try to get a hold of him because she knew that he's like elixir to me. We've always been that way together, and I just love him to death, and it was so good to hear him laugh and talk to him. And like I said, he's been watching some of my shows and getting a hoot out of that. And he wanted me to read some more Pat McManus this week. And I am trying, I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm trying to get him to come on a show. And if he does, you guys will get to meet a kind of a one of a kind guy. Yeah, I got a question for who all's here. Is anybody here ever taken a trip around the country or through the country on Amtrak? I mean, Amtrak's pretty much our only choice, but Brenda and her mom actually took a trip from down around Los Angeles up to San Francisco or Oakland to visit her uncle one time a few years back. And I love trains and would love to take a long trip on a train. I've been on one true passenger train in my life, and that's when I was like the 4th or 5th grade, right before they pretty much shut down that service around in our area. And I was looking the other day, and there's actually one of the trains that runs from New Orleans goes up to Salt Lake City, which is actually only, I don't know if it's 200 miles to my buddy's house. May not even be that far because he lives right over in the corner of Wyoming, almost to Utah. So I don't know. It could happen. And then I'd really like to take I know it would cost a fortune, but I'd really like to take a trip around the country on a train. I think that would just be awesome. We can't get on one here. We have to go somewhere to catch one. There's no service that comes to our area. Closest we can get is a couple places down North Georgia, and then Atlanta is probably about as close as anywhere else. And from Atlanta, we could go just about anywhere. We could go to New Orleans, and from New Orleans, we could go west or northwest. Or I'd love to make a loop out of it of some kind, though, so we could see, some northern. There's a train that runs all the way across the northern tier of states, and that would be. I'd love to do that. And then come down the coast of California and then across the southwest and lower part of the country back into New Orleans, and then back home or something. I think that'd just be a great trip. Years ago, we talked about trying to go somewhere and catch the car train to Florida. The Amtrak runs a what do they call that? An auto train where you can load your car up on a car hauling gondola or whatever, and on the train, and ride the train down to Sanford, which is just east of Orlando, which is kind of where not too far from where Mikey lives. Mike Wheeler, he's in Altamont Springs, I think, and you'd be down there with your car, and you could just drive back if you wanted to, drive back home in your car. I think that'd be a hoot. Of course, I would also like to get on a motorcycle and ride out there and see him. He told me if I didn't get out there to see him sometime, he was going to hop on his horse and ride out here and see me. And I told him to let me know, and I'd let the grass start growing here in the yard and get high so he'd have plenty of graze when he got the horse here. Oh, Dean, bless your heart. I am so sorry. Maybe you should go back to bed. Or maybe, can you call and can George bring you some coffee, buddy? Good morning, otherwise. I've had enough bad news lately, so it was really good to get connected with those guys. I had to, of course, explain to them what they all want to know what's been going on with me, and I told them the truth, but so I had to go over it with them some. But yeah, I feel it really, just to talk to Mark has lifted my spirits more than I can explain. We have a unique and special relationship for sure. I said, if I can get him on the air, you can see what I'm talking about. I think you'll enjoy it. He's a character. And I actually I did something else too. I talked to his dad and mom, and we used to go to their house all the time. Brendan and I did when we actually didn't live. You could just about throw a rock from their house to ours before we moved to Nashville, and we hadn't seen them in a long. They moved to Ohio, and oh, okay, Dean. Well, I can understand that. So I got to talk to him for a while too. I wasn't sure if he was doing okay or not, and it'd been so long since I'd heard from him, and he's pretty much seems like he's still going strong. He's I believe he told me he's 79 now. So yeah, 79. That sounds right, or 78, but ain't one of those high 70 numbers. But he sounded just like his old self, and he's still doing. He has a mold shop, as he calls it. He makes parts for antique reproductive firearms. The locks, and the flint lock mechanisms that made them spark. And rifle parts, and just does that for that niche of the country that likes to reenact and do that in competitions. I used to do a fair bit of that, actually. That one rifle that I've got on my Instagram page was a rifle I used to shoot with. Very accurate rifle, actually. Actually shot pretty well back then. Past Coast. So is that what the East is? Pearl Past Coast and your Future Coast? Would that be about right? Brenda, we got a towhee on the back porch. American towhee, I believe it's full name, a common name. Dean, I've got some extra coffee. If you can figure out a way to, push a straw or something through the screen, you'd have to. It's black. You'd have to doctor it however you prefer it. I don't know if you drink black coffee, but you could throw a little sugar and cream in it. If we could, and you and I could figure that out, we would. We'd be rich men. Okay, East Coast. Okay, future. Well, that makes more sense. What's Middle Coast? Where's that put? Yeah, where's that put Central Time and Mountain Time? Is that semi-future, semi-past? Just saw a different bird. I got bird feeders out here, and I'm watching. Oh, there went a chipmunk. Chip and Dale running across the back porch. Those are new. I mean, they're not new, but we haven't really seen those here at the house much. This year, we've got them running around all over the place. I much prefer them over the big gray squirrels. Oh, Pearl, absolutely. If you can only have 1 cup a day, make it a big cup. How'd you ship that, Dean? You did send it that express mail, right? Oh, you know what? The post office slowed down that first class mail. Maybe that's why you ain't got it yet, Brenda. Oh, well, and if that's the case, Dean, I don't have as much sympathy for you. I thought you were out. If you just need to go get it in the kitchen, then that's on you, buddy. I guess you don't have anybody could bring it to you. Like I said, if you could get that rooster to bring it to you, that'd be a neat trick. I'm actually sorry to hear that, Pearl. That's coffee is a good thing. Dean, I have yet to get to go to Wendy's to have a breakfast sandwich, and I want to do that because I actually think they're probably pretty good, but I can't. I've not been over there in a long time. Oh, just a minute, folks. Let me see if I've got some new pictures. I don't even have the. I'm not even showing the connection for pictures. Well, Mark showed me some pictures this week. He had a cow. Oh no, not a cow, but he had a young bull moose in his yard. His yard is field behind the house. Hey, Cherie, good to see you. Are you guys getting any bad weather today? I couldn't tell if you guys were going to get any, or if it was going to miss you, or how that was going to do its thing. But I know it's going up the coast. It may not be doing anything but causing a lot of waves and riptides right now. Are you on your lunch break, Cherie? Okay. Dean's going to sit there without his coffee. I'm going to wake him up. I'm going to read a story. So bear with me. I hope you guys can enjoy this half as much as I usually do. And I'll try to read it with all the correct best pronunciations I can do in the, what is the word? Syntax. Nuances or whatever to make it sound like it should be. First chapter in this book is, like I said, the title chapter of the book, A Fine and Pleasant Misery. And he starts out like this. Modern technology has taken most of the misery out of the outdoors. And you got to remember, he wrote this in I don't know, 70s, maybe 60s. So camping's come away since then. He wouldn't understand glamping, I don't think. Camping is now aluminum covered, propane heated, foam padded, air conditioned, bug proof, flip top, disposable, and transistorized. Hardship on a modern camping trip is blowing a fuse on your electric underwear or having the battery peter out on your porta-shaver. Major catastrophe is spending your last coin on a recorded nature talk and then discovering the Camp Comfort and Sanitation Center, featuring forest green tile floors and hot showers, has pay toilets. There are many people around nowadays who seem to appreciate the fact that a family can go on an outing without getting out. But I am not one of them. Personally, I miss the old-fashioned misery of old-fashioned camping. Young people just now starting out in camping probably have no idea that it wasn't but a couple of decades ago that people went camping expecting to be miserable. Half the fun of camping in those days was looking forward to getting back home. I'll have to admit, I've kind of been there. When you did get back home, you prolonged the enjoyment of your trip by telling all your friends how miserable you had been. The more you talked about the miseries of life in the woods, the more you wanted to get back out there and start suffering all over again. Camping was a fine and pleasant misery. The source of much misery in old-fashioned camping was the campfire, a primitive contrivance since replaced by gas stoves and propane heaters. It is a well-known fact that your run-of-the-mill imbecile can casually flick a soggy cigar butt out of the car window and burn down half a national forest. Campfire, on the other hand, was a preserved thing perverse thing that you could never get started when you needed it most. If you had just fallen in an icy stream or were hopping around barefooted on frosty ground, uncommon now, but routine back then, you could not ignite the average campfire with a bushel of dry tinder and a blowtorch. The campfire was of two basic kinds, the smudge and the inferno. The smudge was what you used when you were desperately in need of heat. By hovering over the smudge, the camper could usually manage to thaw the ice from his hands before being kippered to death. Even if the smudge did burst into a decent blaze, there was no such thing as warming up gradually. One moment the ice on your pants would show slight signs of melting, and the next the hair on your legs was going up in smoke. Many's the time I've seen a blue and shivering man hunched over a crackling blaze suddenly eject from his boots and pants with a loud yell and go bounding out in the snow, the front half of him the color of bull lobster, the back half still blue. Time for a drink. Because I've got, I even have a coffee heater, so that wouldn't count in Pat's camping. The inferno was what you always used for cooking. Experts on camp cooking claimed you were supposed to cook over something called a bed of glowing coals. But what everyone cooked over was the inferno. The bed of glowing coals was a fiction concocted by experts on camp cooking. Nevertheless, the camp cook was frequently pictured by artists who should have known better as a tranquil man hunkered down by a bed of glowing coals, turning plump trout in the frying pan with the blade of his hunting knife. In reality, the camp cook was a wildly distraught individual who charged through waves of heat and speared savagely with a long, sharp stick at the burning hunk of meat he had tossed on the grill from a distance of about 20 feet. I have a confession to make here. I used to be the camp cook when we rendezvoused, so I can kind of appreciate some of that. I was actually a pretty good camp cook, though, and I did do embers and coals. The smoke from the campfire always blew directly in the eyes of the campers, regardless of wind direction. And that's true, too. No one minded much since it prevented you from seeing what you were eating. If a bite of food showed no signs of struggle, you consider this a reasonable indication that it came from the cook pot and was not something just passing through. There used to be an old gentleman that camped with us and rendezvoused with us, and his name was Ken Sylvie. I love Ken Sylvie to death. Brenda even made him a couple of articles of period clothing for, rendezvousing and doing, Revolutionary War period type stuff. And he had a story he told everybody in camp pretty much every year. But he told it like this. He said the way he saw it, let me see how he put that. Nobody in camp wanted to cook. So they drew straws till they found out who was going to be the cook, the first cook. And then the rule was whoever complained first about the food got to be the second cook, and so on and so on. So this guy was cooking, and they'd been up there for a week or so, and nobody had breathed a word of complaint. Everybody was just eating, and nobody would say anything, even though some of them were, choking and looking the other way. And so one day he was tired of it, and he thought he would he fix this once and for all. He was tired of cooking. So he dumped like a whole handful of salt in this guy's eggs, and he figured that would do it because nobody could eat those eggs without talking about it, without complaining. So he peppered them up good, and he filled them full of salt, and he passed them to this guy, and he sat and waited and kind of watched. And the guy started eating, and he got this strange look on his face, and all of a sudden he just hollered out, "Woo-wee, these eggs are salty, but that's just how I like them." So that's what Ken Silver used to tell me. He said, "Oh, these eggs are salty, but that's just like the way I like them." So he never had to cook. The best part about cooking, though, in the camp was everybody else had to wash dishes. So, I'd cook and they'd clean up. So that actually worked out good for me because I'd much rather cook than clean up. Aluminum foil was not used much in those days, and potatoes were simply thrown naked into the glowing coals, which were assumed to lie somewhere at the base of the inferno. After about an hour, the spuds were raked out with a long stick. Most of the potatoes would be black and hard as rocks, and some would be rocks, but it didn't make much difference to us. Successive layers of charcoal would be cracked off until the white core of potato was uncovered, usually the size of a walnut or maybe a pea. And this part would be raw. Sometimes there would be no white core at all, and those potatoes were said to be cooked through. Either that or they were rocks. There were other fine sources of camping miseries besides campfires. One of the finest was the old-fashioned bedroll. No matter how well you tucked in the edges of the bedroll, it always managed to spring a leak in the middle of the night. A wide assortment of crawly creatures, driven by a blast of cold air, would stream in through the leak. Efforts to close the gap merely opened new leaks, and finally you just gave up and lay there, passing the time until sunrise, approximately 37 hours, by counting off insects one by one as they froze to death on your quivering flesh. My bedroll, made from one of my grandmother's patchwork quilts, was an oven compared to the first sleeping bag I ever spent a night in. My inconstant boyhood companion, Stoop Jones, told me one September day that I would not need my bedroll on our outing that night because he had discovered an honest-to-goodness sleeping bag in the attic of his house, and it was big enough for both of us to sleep in. Yeah, you should have known better than that right off. Now, when I say what a compact little package a real sleeping bag could be folded up into, I became immediately ashamed of my own cumbersome bedroll, which rolled up into a bundle the size of a bale of hay. I was glad that I had not marred the aesthetics of our little camping trip by toting the gross thing along. That night, we spread the sleeping bag out on a sandy beach alongside Sand Creek. Stripped to our shorts, we had both been taught never to sleep with our clothes on, and hopped into the bag. The effect was much like plunging through thin ice into a lake. Not wishing to insult my friend or his sleeping bag, I stifled a shrill outcry with a long, deep gasp, disguised in turn as a yawn. Stoop said through chattering teeth that the sleeping bag was bound to warm up, since it was, after all, a sleeping bag. Wasn't it? No two lovers ever clung to each other with more tenacity as did those two 8-year-old boys through that interminable night. Later, we discovered that some sleeping bags come in two parts. One a nice padded liner and the other a thin canvas cover. What we had was the latter. One of the first misery-producing camping trips I've ever been on occurred when I was about 14. One of the finest misery-producing camping trips. 3 friends and I were hiking to a lake high up in the Idaho Rockies. What had been a poor, struggling drizzle when we left home worked its way up and became a highly successful blizzard in the mountains. Before long, our climbing boots, also known as tennis shoes in more prosperous parts of the world, were caked with ice. The trail was slowly being erased before our very eyes, and I was beginning to write news stories in my head. The futile search for 4 young campers lost in the snowstorm has been called off. As we clawed our way up the side of the mountain, one of the frailer souls, never asked me who, suggested that the better part of valor or even of stark madness might be to turn back. But he was shouted down with such cries as, "When I come this far, no fish, I'm going fishing. I'm going to fish. And who knows which way is back?" Eventually we came to a tiny cabin of a trapper who had either been a midget or had crawled around on his knees all day, for the structure was only about 4 feet from dirt floor to log ceiling. We tied the place up by evicting a dead porcupine, split up enough wood to last a month, and started the fire in a little makeshift stove. The stovepipe was a foot short of the roof, and this resulted in the minor inconvenience of having the roof catch fire every once in a while, but nobody really minded. On the second day, Kenny and I found our way up to the lake, where he carried out his vow to fish, and then we stumbled back to the cabin. We stripped off our sopping clothes and sat down side by side on the woodpile next to the stove, where glowing pipe was sending out soothing waves of heat from the flames, howling up through it. Now, as was our practice in those days, we had carried enough grub with us to feed a regiment of lumberjacks for a week of full-time eating. And Norm, a rather plump kid, decided to take the edge off his boredom by shooting baskets with an excess of hard-boiled eggs he had discovered. The opening at the top of the stovepipe served as the basket. Kenny and I watched in fascinated horror, as they say, as one of the rim shots lodged at the edge of the glowing pipe, and the whole contraption began to topple forward towards our naked laps. Now, both of us worked up a sizable amount of activity, but because of the cramped quarters, it was insufficient to move us clear of the descending pipe. In order to avoid incurrence of potentially worse damage to our anatomies, we caught the stovepipe in our hands. For 2 or 3 hundredths of a second, we passed the glowing cylinder back and forth between us, all the while calmly contemplating the best course of action, since neither of us could manage to accumulate enough free time to leverage to get up from the woodpile. At last, it occurred to us to simply drop the pipe on the floor, both of us wondering why we hadn't thought of such an obvious solution sooner. At the time, it seemed that we had juggled the stovepipe for approximately 2 hours, but in retrospect, I doubt that the total time was more than half a second. Smoke, true to its nature, had in the meantime filled the cabin to overflowing. And the 4 of us rolled out through the tiny door as a single choking ball of adolescent humanity. The storm outside, particularly to those not wearing any clothes, was refreshing and seemed to call for some strenuous exercise. What followed, as Vern remarked later, was something you don't see every day. 2 naked and enraged people chasing a hysterical fat kid up the side of a mountain in the middle of a blizzard. In terms of misery, that camping trip was very fun. I once launched my family on a program designed to toughen them up, on the assumption that the more misery they could endure, the more they would enjoy hunting, fishing, and camping. It wasn't miserable all the time. Whenever anyone skinned a knee or thumped his crazy bone, he was to reply in answer to inquiries about the extent of his pain, a mere detail. Thus, my children were expected to ignore the minor miseries encountered in the acquisition of outdoor knowledge and experience, and to make little of mosquito bites, burned fingers, and the vast assortment of natural projectiles known as stickers. As it turned out, though, I had to abandon the program. That's sad. One day on a family camping trip, I picked up a large branch for firewood and discovered an outlaw band of yellow jackets waiting in the ambush. Now, I have been here. A running battle ensued. I finally outdistanced the little devils, as I call them, but not before several of them had inflicted some terrible wounds on various parts of my person. My family watched as I flitted like a nymph through the woods, careening off of boulders, leaping mammoth moss-covered logs. Fortunately, as my wife said later, most of my shouts were inaudible, and the children were saved from traumas that might have wrought psychological havoc. Get that. When I finally lunged back into camp, still sweating and snarling, my littlest girl consoled me with the words, "Details, Daddy, mere details." Well, I decided right then and there, if a kid can't distinguish between real pain and a little old skinned knee, then I had better call off the whole program, and that's what I did. I mean, you don't want your children to grow up and to be totally insensitive. But camping misery is the thing of the past. Like most of my fellow outdoorsmen, having gathered unto the camper the fruits of technology, I am protected from cold by propane, from hardness by foam rubber, and from the insect world by a big bug bomb. Still, sometimes I have a nostalgic yearning for some of that old-fashioned misery, and it came to me that what we needed nowadays is a misery kit. That's a thought. I think it would find a market, especially among older campers who might enjoy a bit of instant misery on a camping trip, so they would have something to tell the folks back home about. There could be an aerosol can for spraying a blast of cold air down your back every once in a while, another for spraying smoke in your eyes. There might even be a pair of refrigerated boots that you could stick your feet into for a few minutes each morning. A rock on a pine cone could be included. A rock or a pine cone could be included for sleeping under the fitted sheet of a camping bunk. Everyone, of course, would want a pre-charged spud. I mean, that's camp food. There might even be a box of mixed insects, yellow jackets, mosquitoes, ticks, chiggers, and deer flies. But maybe that would be carrying misery a bit too far. So there's an example of Pat McManus's writing. Now, obviously, he is exaggerated about these things, but I can tell you for a fact that some of that's true. I'll never forget waking up one morning on the mountain. We pitched a teepee up on a clearing up near the top of the mountain when we were hunting in the area of the Cherokee National Forest, and it was me and Mark and his dad, Larry, and at least one or two other friends of ours who wanted to go hunting, but they weren't necessarily. We were all hunting in moccasins and muzzleloaders, actually. But he wasn't. He was just there. He was just there to hunt and modern firearms and that kind of stuff. But, it was really cold. It doesn't seem like it anymore, because when we have Thanksgiving around here, it seems warm. But, then it was cold at Thanksgiving. I can even remember one Thanksgiving when it was below zero. And so it was pretty cold up there. And we had positions. When you sleep in a lodge or a teepee, you kind of sleep around the edges. And there's a fire in the middle. That's the great thing about a teepee. You can have a fire in the middle of the teepee while you're in there, because the smoke goes out through the top. If you set it up right, it should always go out through the top. And you can adjust the smoke flaps. That's what they call, if you see a teepee, that's what sticks out. And you can adjust those to the wind so the wind picks up. It's just like a chimney in a house. So the smoke, for the most part, goes straight up. Now, it doesn't always. You pretty much live in kind of a smoky environment. It's probably going to burn your eyes. And sometimes the wind changes and blows it back down in. But all in all, very nice. It can stay really warm and comfortable. But somebody has to tend to the fire because in this case, it was an open fireplace. There's actually a little camp stove you can put in the middle of them now that you can run a pipe up to the smoke flap area, and it'll take all the smoke out and it'll stay warm, all night long. So I laid by the door closest to the door and was the guy who kind of tended the fire at night because I'd wake up and throw a log on it and, keep it going. And I woke up one night and it had gotten cold. The fire had died down. So I woke up to throw a log on it. And across from me on the fire, one of the guys that was with us, a friend of mine's brother, was sitting over there trying to get dressed. Maybe it was getting time to get out and go hunting, daylight. And I watched him for a minute. He was freezing. I don't remember what kind of sleeping gear he had. Maybe he had Pat's grandmother's bedroll, but he was freezing. And what made it worse was his boots. Your boots and clothes, if they were near the edge of the teepee, were cold. And he put his boots on, and he was sitting there just shivering. And he said, "Oh God, my feet are like ice." And then it's like he had a moment, and he thought about it, and realized he hadn't put his socks on. So he put his bare feet down into ice cold leather boots, and they were freezing. "Hey there, buddy. No, better late than never. Hope the Zoom call went well. I wasn't sure how long it would last today. I knew there'd be a few people there." So, he had, I would think that would qualify as a fine and pleasant misery, sticking your bare feet down into ice cold hunting boots. So, not bad. I've been rained on my share, and I've been stung my share. We hiked in Boy Scouts one time. We hiked from not the bottom, but down the valley along what we call Big Limestone Creek. And no, not Big Limestone. Dix Creek, I guess. I have to think about that for a minute. Dix Creek ran into this creek. It was pretty big creek. Not long enough to be a river, but pretty good sized creek. And then we hiked from there up to the top of the mountain. And we got up on the mountain trail where we're going to a place known as Beauty Spot, which is now a part of a National Habitat Protection Area. The Beauty Spot was this cleared area on top of the mountains. That's a unique phenomenon down here on tops of some mountains. They're bald or no trees. Some of them are high and don't have trees because they're cold and the wind blows all the time. And some of them just have these open clearings that have just been there forever. 50-mile badge walk. I had that. I think I had that, John. I'm not sure about that, but maybe. I know we were working on stuff like that. This is for a camporee or camperall or, some group thing in the district. But anyway, as we were walking along the trail, all of a sudden a bunch of us started jumping and yelling. Yellow Jackets had been, I actually remember seeing the nest. So I'm thinking that a bear or maybe a skunk, but probably a bear had dug the nest out of the ground. And it was cold. It was getting cold. So the bees were, if you've ever been around Yellow Jackets, that may be one of the few bugs that I really don't like. I mean, everybody knows I can get along with spiders and snakes and things like that. But Yellow Jackets, I do not like. And one of them landed on my arm and he stung me. But when he tried to pull away, he couldn't get off. He couldn't release the stinger. So he would literally pull his guts out. And I learned later that's kind of something that happens when they're cold and they're about to die anyway. So basically this Yellow Jacket was on his deathbed, but he managed to summon up enough energy and courage to get up and sting me on the arm. I mean, that's how ornery and mean they are. And on top of that, Yellow Jackets are carnivorous. I've seen them eat carrion. So they can bite is the point there. So not only can they sting more than once, unlike some bees who can only sting you once, Yellow Jackets are different because they do that and then they bite the crap out of you. And I don't like those things. They hurt. The stings are painful. And then after the pain goes away, they get itchy. And, for 2 or 3 days, you're sitting there dying to itch. I'm back, Dean. You got back just in time to hear the end of the Yellow Jacket story. So I guess I've known a few of those fine and pleasant miseries. John probably did too when he was growing up. You missed the Pat McManus, but you'll have to run the replay and learn about fine and pleasant miseries of camping when you were a kid. But rain was one of them. We were teepee camping one year at the national muzzleloading rifle matches up in Indiana, and it started raining towards the end of the week, and it rained and rained and rained and rained. And up there, we were dressed in buckskins and cloth clothing, but we didn't have raincoats and umbrellas and that sort of thing. So we wore some wool trade blanket coats that were made and actually wool turns water pretty well up to a point. And then even when it's wet, it stays pretty warm. Wool's actually a pretty fantastic natural material. But anyway, it was raining so bad that when we finally broke camp, the water was flooding down the hill and under our teepee, and we were wading through the newly made creek to pack our stuff in the truck. And it was so muddy and wet that I walked over carrying something one time to the truck and realized that the mud had sucked my boots right off my feet, and I had to go find it. So, that was pretty miserable. That was a trip I was kind of glad was over by that point, because you can take a little rain when you're camping, but a whole lot of rain goes a long, long way. John, we didn't camp once a month, but we would take short little trips, and camp one night somewhere. And as I got older, we camped a little bit more, and I would backpack myself, and we'd go up the mountains and hike some. I hiked some of the Appalachian Trail that way, and we'd find a spot, and sometimes if we were by the creek, we might catch a few crawdads to eat or something. But I like camping. And teepee living is pretty special. Chief Dan George said once in the movie Josie Wales, Outlaw Josie Wales, he said, "If this is teepee living, I'll take it." If you set the teepee up right, the natives, American teepees originally were made out of buffalo hides. That was one of the things they used the buffalo for. And they would, of course, the women pretty much took care of the hides, and they would, skin the buffalo, or the braves would, and the women would prepare the hides. And some of them they would leave the skin on, or the fur on, the hair on, so they could use for warmth. And they would sleep on them. I actually have a buffalo robe, part of a buffalo robe laying over here on the floor that I've slept on and wrapped it around me. It's pretty warm. And they'd also scrape in the tanning process. They'd take all the hair off, and you'd have a raw skin, a rawhide, if you will. But it being buffalo, it was pretty thick and tough, and they would smoke that. And they smoked it by putting it in the top of the lodge where the smoke goes out. And after a while, I've got some of that too. And then they'd break it down and work it till it was really soft. And the smoke actually added a bit of waterproofing to the hide. So they actually built their teepees out of buffalo hides and would stitch them together and put it up. So they were pretty heavy, I would imagine. And but once that part was done and they built the lodge, sometimes they would even put like an inner cover over part of it, so if it did rain, the rain couldn't get to the sleepers. And they usually had an inner lining in them that goes up about your head, and that helps draw the draft in under the outside of the tent or the bottom of the teepee. That's part of what helps the flue and makes the smoke go out. And that also keeps you, in the winter, it would keep you more protected. And they would build a fence around the lodges in the wintertime so that the wind couldn't get to them. They'd stack up brush or maybe even stack up snow so that they could block the wind and it couldn't get under the lodge. They'd pull the sides down tighter. But you always had to have a little bit of that ventilation because you had to have it draw the smoke out. So, it was, but if you have a fire inside a lodge like that, they stay pretty warm. I mean, I've slept in one down to in the 20s and was fairly comfortable, really. Were those tents John, when you were a camp counselor, were those tents permanent like the camp there, or did you guys actually pitch them on the ground? We slept in tents when I went to summer camp, but the tents were usually wall tents with 2 bunks in them, and you could stand upright in the middle of the peak, and they were on wooden platforms usually. So, you weren't on the ground, but we actually slept on cots, so that was different. Hey, Tina, I figured you'd be in here once the meeting was over. If you were in the meeting, but I'm guessing you were. Thank goodness now I have a trained mod or two in here that I can depend on. I liked wall tents. My buddy Mark and I was talking about earlier, again, another adventure we had. I went to Wyoming and we went bow hunting out there one year, and he got a wall tent he had a wall tent that he could use on occasions from the game and fish department. And it had what some people might call a sheep herder stove. It was a metal stove that you kind of unfolded and put together, and with a flume out, and the tent was a wall tent, and it actually had a flap and an asbestos or fireproof opening where you could run the. Yes, you do, Tina. You can bop trolls all day long. That's why I got that for you. That is a troll bopping bat now. Did you happen to bring that up in your meeting? Because you should have. You could issue. That could be a standard issue thing. But anyway, this stove in there, it was the first time I'd ever actually used a closable stove. So we could build a little fire in that thing, and it kept us toasting. It was really cold up there. We were about 10,000 feet in the fall in the high mountains of Wyoming, and it'd keep us very warm. I mean, it would, because it was enclosed, you could adjust it and actually keep a fire in it pretty much all night. The Utica Comets, or they play baseball, or do they play something else? Oh, well, good for you, Tina. You got here either just too late or just in time to miss my boring story. I was reading a little story out of one of my books that I've been talking about for last couple of weeks by Pat McManus. And when he was telling about how miserable it was to go camping, but when he was a kid, they loved it. He said, kids today don't know about real camping. I took my kids backpacking a time or two, and they made it, but I don't think they liked it a whole lot. Hockey, good. AHO and the AHL, cool. Is that Tina? Are they playing a real season yet, or is this like preseason? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw something on TV a couple of days ago about the first games of the actual season are coming up. I thought they were still in had some more preseason games to go. I saw the Preds play one night against Carolina. I can't remember who won that game. But I'm ready. I'm ready for hockey. If it wasn't for hockey, I'd die in the winter, because football's over. College football's over, by Christmas usually, or January 1 or 2, whatever the playoffs are. But after that, I used to not have much in the way of sports to watch, but now I can watch hockey because I can get it on TV. That's one of the finest things about HD TV is when you watch hockey games on TV, you can see the puck, you can keep up with the action. I watched hockey on TV many years ago, but you couldn't see what was going on exactly. Home opener. Oh, that's still not very far off for a home opener. I didn't realize they were this close to starting. I thought it'd be in November, but that's not bad. Yes, I am a Preds fan, John. I certainly am. Well, the Stars had kind of had their run. Well, they were tough last year. Uh, I hope the Preds can make a little bit of a comeback. They made it to the playoffs, but they didn't get very far after that. In fact, they got Texas, was it Dallas that swept them, or either almost swept them, I guess. Um, Man, I tell you, the year they made it to the finals against Philadelphia or Pittsburgh rather was a great season. Now, you talk about firing Southern people up for hockey. Now that really helped. But Tampa won last year, so I mean, the South has got hockey teams now. It's moved on. I can remember when nobody played hockey when I was growing up. We didn't have hockey teams. No schools, no high schools or colleges around here had hockey teams. Uh-oh. What did John? What else did? Oh. No, wait a minute. So I'll get caught back up, John and Tina. Which game are you talking about? Are you talking about the AFL game or whatever it was, AFC uh, game? Or are you talking about another team? I got to back up here. I've lost track of myself. AHL. That's cool, John. In fact, down here, there didn't used to be hockey fans. I mean, people just didn't watch hockey. It wasn't on TV much. And like I said, when it was on, it was kind of hard to follow. And, when cable came along and then I still didn't see a lot of it, although I'm sure there was more of it on. But once I got a big TV and I got the hockey channel and NBC Sports then was carrying it. Now ESPN's going to, I could finally really see games. And man, it's just that makes such a huge difference. I've watched them. I've even turned my TV on standard definition and watched a hockey game, and it's really more difficult for me at least to see the hockey and get some of the nuances of what the plays are. But turn it back to HD, and it's a whole different world. So I learned to like hockey as a kid, listening to the St. Louis Blues on the radio. I had a radio that could tune in. It was a radio about yay big and had multi channels. You could even listen to some TV channels on it. You could pick them up on UHF or something. And I would get there at night, and if I wasn't ready to go to sleep or if I wanted to, listen to something else, I would start tuning in some of those big AM radio stations that used to blast the world, like WOWO out of Chicago, and there was a huge one out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Was it? I can't remember the name of it. I used to listen to that one all the time. And usually could only get them at night. Usually once the sun came up, I'd lose them. There was a couple out of Florida I used to pick up. But one of the ones I could pick up pretty regularly was KNOX out of St. Louis. Uh-oh. Yeah, don't watch when I yell, I don't want to get everybody else started. But I'd watch that, or I'd listen to that on the radio at night, and they'd be doing blues games. So, you've got a kid laying in the middle of the night listening to a hockey game, and he's never seen a hockey game back then. So when they would say there's icing or call icing or a penalty, you only had to imagine what that was. For the longest time, I didn't know what some of those terms meant. So then I found out, and then I could listen more and enjoy it more. So I kind of learned about hockey listening to the radio. And I still listen to games on my phone sometimes because I can get NHL games on my phone. Some are free and some I'd have to pay for, but if I wanted to, I could get them all on there, which is just amazing. Okay, John, thanks for stopping in. Tell Dad we said hi. Oh, got another squirrel down there. He's trying to raid the other feeder. I didn't think they could get into that one. We've got one out here two out here they've not been able to destroy. So I have, these are both pretty good designs. I don't know if you guys feed birds. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate squirrels, because that's a strong word for an animal, they're just animals. But God almighty, they tear your feeders up and eat all your seed, and they're in that regard, they're a nuisance. And boy, I've got some big ones, and they have worked and worked and worked to figure out my bird feeders, and they've got one figured out how to reach into it and pull seed out, and then they can pick it up and eat it, but they can't get into the feeders. And they've tried to chew them open. I've had them chew plastic ones, just big holes in them. But so far, they've not been able to chew these up. They're metal and glass, I think, and they can't chew that. So that's helped. Chipmunks are a lot cuter, Jonathan, and welcome in, Jonathan. Thanks for coming. Well, so we've got a chipmunk, and what's really funny or cute about him is I've got some feeders hanging just off behind my door here, and we've got like a patio outside a sliding glass door and then a concrete block wall that goes up and sort of stair steps up to the top, and that's a retaining wall for the the yard back there, I guess, and keeps water from running in when it rains and whatnot. But the chipmunks will come from the far on this end, which is my left, and they'll go running along the top of the wall, and they'll get within a couple of feet of the bird feeder, and they leap up into the bird feeder, and this bird feeder's got a wire mesh cage all the way around it, but they're small enough that they can go in it like the birds do, and they can get in there and they just sit there and eat, and then they get their jaws full, which is, if you've ever seen chipmunks, they do that, and they jump down and run back away for a minute, and then they'll come back and get some more. The gray squirrels, they just walk up there and hop up on them, but they're clowns and acrobats. They hang completely upside down like bats, and they swing, and they're trying to get food. They can just barely reach through the arm, get through one of them, and they can drag some stuff out. And the other one, they can get to the food. Well, they can get to the openings for the food, but they're metal, and they're too small for them to get in beyond their hand or their paw. Might as well be a hand. And but they're still eating a lot of my bird seed. So I've been shooting them with a squirt gun. I bought Brenda a super soaker, kind of a squirt gun thing. And if I can sneak out the door, I pull the curtain up some on the sliding door so it looks like a blind. And if I'm real quiet, I can sneak over there and slip the super soaker out the door like a pump shotgun and nail them. And man, do they go flying. If I do that a couple of times, they will leave my bird feeders alone for a few hours. And then one of them will get dumb again. He'll come back. Well, I don't consider them dumb. I think they're pretty darn smart. They figure stuff out. I don't know if you've ever seen them. I'm sure there's videos on YouTube where they set up an obstacle course that the squirrel has to get through in order to get to the feeder. And most of the time they figure it out. They put all kinds of traps and things to block them, and they still get through. But chipmunks I don't mind. They don't do as much damage, and they're a whole lot cuter when they run across. And chipmunks are actually new for us in our yard. We didn't really have chipmunks much before, and this year I've seen them all over the place. So, and they're not causing us any damage. I know in some places they can burrow, I guess, in flower beds and stuff, and they may be doing that to Brenda's, but they're not doing enough to hurt them. But the gray squirrels, I tell you, when I was younger, I'd have been out there shooting them with a 22, and we'd been having squirrel dumplings by now. Do you guys have any kind of small ground squirrel out there, Dawn? I don't know if you do or not. There are bigger ground squirrels in some parts of that country. And if you get on out to the mountains, the Rockies, there are more chipmunks. We used to feed them out. No, even when we were in New Mexico a lot, we had them running all over the place. And they love things like Cheetos or Cheez-It crackers. we used to have we camped somewhere in New Mexico one time on a big trip we took out there in the motorhome and toured the area. And Jennifer was real little, and the we'd go out there to eat a snack. We'd be sitting around the table or something, and yes, they are conniving. They sure are. But they would come out and sneak and get into our Cheetos, and or wait for one of us to drop one or something. They'd run in and get it and then run out. What makes them so cute is though how they fill their cheeks up with them. Oh, they love sunflower. That's what mostly we've got in our feeders is sunflower seeds, and they love those. Like I said, the chipmunks will fill their jaws up, and I don't even when they get their jaws full. I'm not sure how they get back out of the feeder because they're inside the cage. But they slip through and go back and spread that around or give it to their roommates or whatever they do with it, and then they come back for more. I wish I could trap them, catch them, and mark them, tag them so I could see maybe to get an idea how many there are. I did that a few years back on mice. I put little tags on them, and I caught them for so many weeks and see how many I recaptured and how many were new squirrel. I didn't catch ground chipmunks. I did catch chipmunks. I wasn't there for chipmunks. I was actually there for mice, wild mice, deer mice, and white-footed mice. But every once in a while, I'd catch a flying squirrel, which was really cool, or I'd catch a chipmunk, which was pretty cool. But those little guys are their mouth's like a buzzsaw. Man, they'll bite you, and they'll bite through your skin. They sink those. They got tushes, teeth that right in the front, those big rodent teeth, and they will sink those through your finger in a New York second because I've got experience. You guys have fox squirrels. That's cool. We have fox squirrels back here now, and they're actually spreading. That was one of the things unofficially that a friend of mine and I did while working at TVA. We started watching for fox squirrels and moving into new areas. We only had them in a few places up here. In fact, at one time they were just like in one mountain area, and they get down towards Middle and West Tennessee, you see more of them. But up here they were fairly rare. And in fact, to go fox squirrel hunting was kind of a big deal because we had gray squirrels everywhere, but fox squirrels not so much. But now they're spreading out, so we see them in a lot of places, and they're cool. I mean, they're big as they're not as big as Teddy, but they're big as some cats, and they've got their faces are black or white or maybe both. Their nose can be white, or I've seen black nose ones. They stand up a lot. They're mostly a ground squirrel. They will climb a tree, but they're not they're not very coordinated and not very graceful in a tree. A gray squirrel can fly through the trees like a trapeze artist or something. They're just fearless, and they just fly, they just jump from limb to limb and go. And I mean, it's kind of amazing how well they get along. But fox squirrels really don't like trees so much. They only use a tree in a last resort to escape, me or prey. And a lot of times they'll just kind of run up the tree a little bit and then get on a big limb, and they'll lay down flat so you can't see them, or they think you can't see them. Squirrels always flick their tail, so even though they're hiding, they're flicking that tail so you can find them usually. We were fox squirrel hunting one time, and this cracked me up so much. I think we went hunting them that day, but we had a fox squirrel run up a tree, and he got up on a limb, and I guess he got too high, or he was not paying attention, and he fell out of the tree, just like me or you would fall out of the tree, and he hit the ground like a sack of flour, and he just kind of laid there for a minute, stood up, sort of meandered off. I was just thinking all the other fox squirrels were probably laughing their tails off because he fell out of the tree. It was funny. I mean, I about rolled on the ground. It was just funny. He looked embarrassed, but he just, I told him to stay out of trees. I let him go. I wasn't going to shoot him. I couldn't shoot him. I couldn't bear to, do him harm. He was, he was already injured. Hey, Kelly and the Mickey Bunch is in the room. Miss Redheaded Pirate. I don't doubt that, Jonathan. If you get them trained to do that, they will come and take food right out of your hand just about. And if you're not, running them off or doing anything to them, and I don't have a problem with that. for the most part, but I just hate when they tear up my bird feeders. And they eat a lot more of the seed than my birds do usually. How is Miss Kelly today and the rest of the gang down that way, or wherever you happen to be today? If you are with or see Mr. Ryan, tell him I said hi, and I've missed seeing him lately, which is probably more my fault than his, but I certainly miss talking to him. Maybe I should give him a call one night. I was talking earlier about, I'm going to stay on the wildlife train here for a minute. I was talking earlier about my friend Mark, and he had a moose in his yard. It was I don't know if it was a young bull moose, but it looked kind of young. It didn't have really big antlers for a moose, or for an adult mature moose. Their antlers can be huge, and this one wasn't that big. It wasn't small. It wasn't a little bitty, but it wasn't nearly as big as they can get. And it was just feeding in his backyard. And they're kind of funny animals. But he went out one night, he said, last year, I believe, and it was sometime, I don't know, I don't know if it was wintertime, but it was dark, and he had to go out to his barn for something. So he walked out of his house and went to the barn, and somewhere in between the house and the barn, he got between a female moose and her calf, and she attacked him. And, she came charging at him, reared up on her hind legs, and pawed at him like a boxer or something you'd see, and broke some ribs and beat him up pretty good. And I've always heard that in Alaska, more people are harmed, hurt, killed, maimed, or whatever by cow moose than they are by grizzly bears. Because if you get between a moose and her obviously you get between a bear and her cub, she's going to rip you up too. But well, I hope that. I'm glad that you never know what to say about that, Kelly. It's good that he's working. It's good to be working, but then again, I've worked those 16-hour days before, and there comes a point where enough's enough. Just saying. So hopefully that'll ease up on him a little bit. But I'm sure, hopefully it's working out. But I do miss seeing him. I miss talking to him. He's a good man, I believe. So anyway, Mark got beat up by a cow moose. I was kidding him about that a little bit, but they will do some damage. Were you feeding the raccoons and squirrels, or they'll find a way. But there's a lot more raccoons and stuff down there than people realize, I think, and otters. I saw a family of otters one year I was down there working in the intercoastal waterway down towards New Smyrna Beach in that area, Kelly, south of you guys. And, I was standing there on the dock one day just watching the sun go down or something, or come up, and a family of otters walked right underneath me along the shoreline there. Okay, Dean, you're back again. Hey, Monarch Moments is in the house. I'm going to assume that is Garrett. Kelly, you're spoiling them. That's terrible. I'm sure they appreciated it, but and you're right, they would love any kind of treats. There's not much a raccoon won't eat. Was that in Daytona also, Kelly? Otters, I like otters. I think otters are neat. Otters were native here, but there weren't any left around here. They reintroduced them a few years back, and now they're in every watershed in the state. Now they have come back with a vengeance. And I don't know if you know this or not about otters, but they're funny little animals. If there's a colony of otters every one of them, oops, ooh, I hope I didn't break something. Every one of them will go to the bathroom in the same place. They have what's called latrine sites. So I guess in their own way, they're kind of trying to clean up their area, but they will all go to the same place to poop. And all they eat is fish, pretty much. And so you can imagine what that starts to smell like if they're doing that, say, in the back seat of your boat that's tied up at the dock. And I ran into a lady on the lake one day, and she was trying to clean up her boat because she thought it was beavers. I'm pretty sure it was otters, but they had absolutely crapped all over the inside of her boat. She was having an awful time cleaning it up and having a real hard time keeping her breakfast down. So they like buttered rice. Did they prefer it with or without sugar, Kelly? I mean, when I eat rice for breakfast, I usually had some kind of sugar, either sugar, white sugar, or brown sugar was my favorite. Damn raccoons. They just don't know a good thing when they got it. Garrett, tell me something, buddy. Are you still up or did you just get up early this morning? Holy cow, Batman, it's almost noon. Oh, I bet they do like marshmallows. Are they funny to watch eat them? I wonder if they are sticky when they eat them. That's fun. That might be funny. I don't know. If you ever tried to feed them peanut butter, it might be kind of mean. You know, I've seen dogs eat peanut butter and it takes them forever to lick it off the roof of their mouth. And, you know, for the record, Garrett's trying to talk me into going on later at night so he don't have to get up so early. And I have been talking about doing a night show. I haven't been back to the motorcycle thing yet because of transportation issues and when I have to go down there. But with that, and I've been trying to get used to using my camera or my gimbal in my phone. So I'm working on that. You know, I think peanut butter is okay for dogs. I think a lot of dogs do like it. I think it's probably a good protein source even for them, but it's funny to watch them eat it. So you have chihuahuas, huh? You know, I didn't used to like those little dogs, but because they're so yappy, but you know, they're not bad little dogs. I mean, they got the heart of the lion, or at least they want to have a heart of a lion, and they're pretty good watchdogs. I mean, in their own way, not much gets by them. The Chihuahua thing. Anybody remember that? That was from the TV show. What was it? WKON or KNO Cincinnati? Or that ain't right. But if you guys know the show, it had Lonnie Anderson on it. Yeah, Lonnie Anderson. I know the guys' faces, but I can't remember the name of the rest of the actors. There was Johnny something. He was one of the DJs, and anyway, pretty funny show. And Les Nessman was his acting name was the roving reporter. He went up in the he'd do the traffic reports like that. WKRP in Cincinnati. You know, it'd say, well, now we're sending it to Les, who's out doing traffic from the KRP helicopter. And he'd sit there and go, today's traffic looks like it's pretty good. We're over the center part of town and moving out to the west end, and we're going to circle back and pretend like he had a helicopter. You're not old. Now, me and James are old compared to most people in here. I'm not sure about Tina, but I think she's still younger than us. You remember when they had the turkey fly thing? Everybody thought they were going to drop frozen turkeys out of the helicopter, but he threw live turkeys out that couldn't fly. Probably not funny, but in a way it was funny. He was throwing, like domestic turkeys like you'd cook or have on Thanksgiving, butterball types, throwing them out of the helicopter. And he said, who knew they couldn't fly? because they were just splatting on the ground. Wild turkeys can fly. They don't do it a lot. They'd rather run on the ground. I've seen them run. Man, they run like a race car. They can jump up and accelerate and get away from you really fast through the woods. But I have seen them pop up and jump up in the air and fly down a hill. I mean, they're funny looking when they fly because they, just to look at one, they don't look like they're made to fly. I mean, they're built like a basketball with a long neck and a skinny legs, but they can spread their wings and move off down the hill quite gracefully if they need to. My first wild turkey I ever saw did that. In fact, I think we were at the Smoky Mountains walking around in the woods, and one jumped up off a hillside and flew down probably one reason he did fly, because he could glide down the hill. But that was pretty exciting because that was before we had a lot of turkeys, or after the turkeys were all gone here and we had turkeys. That's right, Dean. It's good for their legs. It keeps them nice and fit, gets good, strong muscles in their legs. Probably makes those tendons a little tougher. Okay, there's all my squirrel buddies back out. There's no less than 3 out there right now. Birds are bombing one of them. We've got a round feeder out there too, and the cage is round, and the squirrels so far have not figured out how to get into that one. Now they're out there. There's one out there climbing all around it, but he can't get anything. It's driving him crazy. And his tail's twitching, and I bet he's cut. If he could cuss, or if I could understand squirrel talk, I bet he's giving us hell for that thing because he cannot get in it. If anything falls out of the bottom, he can probably grab it, but he can't get into it. And I got one right here hanging upside down, eating like a bat. They're very adaptable. I was writing a story. I started a story about them the other day. I don't know if I still got that handy or not. I was going to put it out somewhere eventually. I have a theory about squirrels, though. I think they're evolving. And it's more written for humor than real life, but let's see if this is it. Yeah, evolution of squirrels. The eastern gray squirrel, Urus carolinus, that's the gray common gray, is without a doubt one of the most interesting of rodents. While commonly simply called a gray squirrel, they're also known as bushy tails, tree rats, gray squirrels, acrobats, and rat bastards. They are as famous for being a prime ingredient in squirrel dumplings and their tails for fishing lures as they are as bird feeder bandits. And they are more than mere bandits. If they were the size of humans, they could have fleeced the rich and wealthy faster than a Ponzi scheme on Wall Street. They can blast their way into a squirrel-proof bird feeder faster than Butch and Sundance. And they don't even need dynamite. It is my own and several very good friends of mine who are also trained in zoological matters, as am I, that these may be the most intelligent sociopaths on the planet today. They sit on tree limbs far above your yard, chuckling and scheming on how they are going to empty your favorite bird feeders. They are belligerent and mean and plain ornery. Well, I've had hell rain down on my head as the little terrorists bombarded me from on high. And they sat there and laughed. I swear to God, they sat there and laughed. So that's the beginning of my squirrel story I started. Any opinions? When a writer starts writing something and he shares it with the public, he's always afraid it won't go over at all. Uh-oh, found a typo. Well, I'm not here to edit my stories, but I started squirrel hunting when I was a pretty young tot. I would try to be as quiet as we tramped through the fall woods, which sneaking up on squirrels is never easy. So try doing it with this year's crop of super dry, crinkling leaves underfoot. When my dad would find a likely hickory tree, we would find a reasonably clear spot a few yards from the target tree and sit listening and watching. If the squirrels are there, soon you can hear them up there snickering and little bits of hickory nutshells peppering down on the brim of your hat. You'll see the little aerial acrobats running along the tree limbs and leaping like Superman from tree to tree. The squirrel hunter begins to feel the excitement. The tot beside him struggles not to jump up and cry, "There, Dad, shoot!" At which point the younker is told to sit down and be quiet, and if he keeps it up, he will be sent back to Grandma's for cookies. Squirrel hunting is a serious pastime. As I grew older, I graduated to going squirrel hunting all by myself, as most of the local squirrel hunters that I knew used shotguns for squirrel hunting. So did I. I need to write that. Somewhere around my 10th birthday, I got a single shot, 20 gauge Sears shotgun for either my birthday or for birthday, I think. My dream was to eventually graduate to a double barrel, a pump, or maybe even an auto loading model shotgun. Yes, country kids have big dreams too. While there was no professional association of squirrel stalkers, or PASS, and that's a play on the BASS, or Bass Fishing Association, to go on tour with, you never knew what might happen in a few years. I mean, whoever dreamed we could have gotten a job catching bass and earned a living? That's all I got so far. I'm working on it. I'll have to send that out for peer review, of course. So I'm going to rename these guys. I'm going to rename them Securius Batus Carolinus or something, upside down, eating squirrels. Hey, Carol, welcome back. Are you just on your passing through? How was breakfast? And they are honoring. If you're ever really spending time in the woods, and I'm sure they do this to just anybody, but if you're hunting squirrels, you're moving real quiet, or you're sitting under a tree, or sitting on the ground waiting to see one up in a tree, or have one down on a limb, or it's a place where you can actually get a shot at it. But if you're hunting them or taking pictures, but they will get up in a tree where you can't see them, and they will literally throw nuts at you. They will hit you on the head with acorns and walnuts, which are pretty hard. I've been hit many times. And I swear they laugh. They get up there and you can hear them making this chuckling sound. Okay, we got a squirrel territorial battle out here now. Two of them wanting on the same feeder. One of them's young, and I bet I could sneak out and blast him with the super soaker easy. They get their head behind the feeder. They can't see me when I'm coming, and I can shoot them right in the butt. I hope your son's doing well too, Carol. If you're still with him, tell him the bear said hi. Let me catch up here if I missed anything. Down this way too, there are people who breed squirrel dogs and actually raise dogs to hunt squirrels. We never had a dog to hunt squirrels. I never knew there was such a thing till I was working for TVA, I think, and I met a guy. There's a few people around here that actually breed and raise squirrel dogs, and they'll find the squirrel and they'll go to a tree. They'll stand up on the base of the tree and point. And most of them are little dogs, like maybe not Chihuahuas, but little terriers and things that you can train, and probably mostly mutts actually. And they can actually be taught to hunt squirrels and point them up, run them up a tree, or point to the tree. So if you're hunting squirrels, you can do that. Oh, I mentioned you can't really earn a living squirrel hunting, and you can't, but you can earn money. There's a fishing lure company out there called MEPS, MEPPS, and they actually used to buy squirrel tails to use on their fishing lures. The hair, they would use the hair to wrap around their fishing lure. Squirrel hair, tail hair at least, makes good fishing lure material. And they used to buy them from, if you were a kid who wanted to earn $1 or two. Got a message from my buddy Mark. We were joking about a movie. It came out years ago called The Mountain Man. And he answered back appropriately. Oh, good, Carol. What? Which one is this? Which son? If I'm not mistaken, you've got a couple. Is this Kai or somebody else? I'm just being nosy. You don't have to tell us. Okay, guys, it's noon. So, because this is Saturday and because football's about to start and because my favorite team's about to play, I think we'll close up. And it's been a 2-hour show. I've really enjoyed today. Shared a story with you that I wrote and shared a story that Pat McManus wrote. Alejandro. I like that name. Let's see if I can do that like Princess. Alejandro. That's about as much fun to say as Francisco. I don't think Tracy's still here, but I'd like to get his opinion on Alejandro. So anyway, folks, I'm sure there's somebody else out there that's looking for people to talk or mod or just maybe you want to just go see what's going on. Still asleep. Okay, Garrett, that's good. You can still be asleep. Go Vols. That's right. Go. I'm going to say go Texas, Don. I mean, I'll give you that. Go Texas. And I don't know I don't know if they beat Oklahoma the last few. I don't know how they've done the last couple of years. I was thinking Oklahoma had been kind of wearing them out. So everybody that enjoys college football, go watch. Pour you another cup of coffee or get you a soft drink or your favorite adult beverage. Get a comfy place on the couch and turn the volume up real high and get involved in some college football. It don't get much better than that. And then tomorrow you can rest up and do something fun. I don't know if we're going anywhere doing anything tomorrow or not. I might try to get into something. Oh, that's okay, Tina. I'm actually getting ready to sign off because it's 12:01 and football starting, and I want to go watch a game. So I'm gonna sign off. I've been on 2 hours this morning. Thank you to everyone who's been here. Thank you to everyone who's engaged in the chat, and I really appreciate it. And love y'all for doing it and for being here. If you don't mind hitting that like button if you haven't, and subscribe if you wanna. I try to do this about every Saturday, and one way or another, we seem to find good things to talk about. Hook 'em horns. That's right, Don. Hook 'em horns. Go Vols. Maybe we can both win today. And so anyway, as usual, I'll end my show. Oh. Everybody keep Mikey in mind. I meant to mention this early. Mike Wheeler. Most of you know his stepmom passed away this week. And, I know he's had a rough time. She's been not well for some time. But this week it got her best of her and she succumbed to the big C. And I know he's been having a tough time. So everybody keep that in mind. And other than that, everybody go have a good time the rest of the weekend. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Be careful out there. And hey, Pookie, you want to say hi real quick? Come here. Oh, there you go. Say hi. Say bye. This is Spook. This is the old guy. This is the get off my grass guy. But he would love to get the squirrels. He's a mouser extraordinaire, or he was when he was younger. And he's the one that went and tried to run through the glass door the other day to get to the birds and the squirrels out out here in the back porch, but he couldn't get to them. So hey, say hi. There's Carol. She's saying hi, Spooky. And say hi to Turtles. He's watching. You want to say hi? You want to talk? He's actually a real talker. He sasses a lot. He back talks real bad these days. I think it's because he's an old man. He's about 20. And I think he's probably losing his edge just a little bit. He's repeating himself in conversations a lot lately. Anyway, folks, take care. Watch your hair. That's an old frontier mountain man term, so you don't get scalped. And again, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll see you all next Saturday. Have a great weekend, folks. Now I can't find the end broadcast button. Bye-bye.